Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Iran blasts the United States and Israel. New Israeli technology is about to make the airline industry even safer, and it looks like an Israeli driver may make history in NASCAR. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. Iran's supreme leader delivered a scathing speech against the United States yesterday, right after he slammed the rising relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia on social media, who share a growing concern over Iran's threat to the entire region. While insisting that Washington has proven it can't be trusted, Iranian leader Ayatollah al-Khamenei denounced the 2015 nuclear deal as a lethal poison for Iran. The firebrand statements come amid spiking complaints that there's been no tangible change in Iranians' lives since the accord was implemented 6 months ago, as hardline critics of the Iranian regime who were always opposed to the deal are now ratcheting up their complaints. Among his other scathing comments, Khamenei claimed the world powers have failed to live up to their obligations, and that the Americans want to take everything in return for nothing, while responding to Tehran's repeated concessions with bullying, violations, and disloyalty. The deal between the Islamic Republic reached in July of last year with the US, Britain, China, France, Germany, and Russia saw the suspension of some international sanctions in exchange for guarantees Iran wouldn't pursue the development of nuclear weapons. But many of the primary punitive measures, such as those related to its human rights record and ballistic missile testing, however, have remained in effect after the accord was implemented in January of this year. Whereas oil production has rebounded to almost pre-sanction levels, the Islamic Republic's dream of garnering up to $50 billion in foreign investment has so far failed to materialize. Khamenei, who has final say on all state matters, alleges that the US is behind Iran's failure to forge economic relations with other countries, and has now declared that there will be no further talks with Washington. Turning to the Jewish state, which Iran has repeatedly threatened to wipe off the map, Khamenei denounced Jerusalem's recent apparent strengthening of ties with Saudi Arabia. The Ayatollah wrote that Saudi Arabia's relations with the Zionist regime are a stab in the back to the entire Islamic community. He even added that the Saudis are carrying out the bidding of the United States. If you're scared of flying in airplanes, now you have a lot less of a reason to be. One of Israel's leading defense companies has designed a special new optical system that will allow civilian airline pilots to see almost perfectly through fog, smoke, and bad weather. The new system uses special cameras to analyze various wavelengths of light, and then it chooses and combines them with, quote, synthetic vision based on databases of terrain and infrastructure. The combination provides an image that gives each pilot the best visibility as they fly through unclear air. That image is then projected directly over the pilot's eyes on wearable goggles, allowing the pilot to fly the plane as if he or she were seeing straight through inclement weather. And that's not all. The information being projected into images over the pilot's eyes allows them to turn their heads and get real-time pictures to both their right and left. The groundbreaking optical system was developed by the Israeli defense industry leader Elbit Systems for defense purposes, but it's now being converted for use by civilian airplanes. Now, turning to recent defense developments, the Israeli Defense Ministry has just unveiled Israel's first ever wheeled armored personnel carrier, and it's expected to have a major impact on the Israeli Army's infantry brigades. The special new vehicle, known as the Eitan, which means steadfast in English, will replace thousands of aging M113 APCs that are currently being used by the IDF's infantry brigades. The Eitan is specifically designed for combat mobility in difficult terrain, and was designed in light of lessons learned during Operation Protective Edge in 2014. During the 50-day war in Gaza, the IDF and Defense Ministry were harshly criticized for using outdated and badly reinforced armored personnel carriers. A Russian military helicopter was shot down yesterday in Syria, killing all 5 people on board. The tragedy marks the deadliest incident for the Russian military since 2011, when it first intervened in the country. Joining us today in the studio is INSS researcher Vera Michelin-Shapir to discuss the future of Russia's involvement in the Middle East and its effect on Israel. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So, to begin, can you shed some light on what happened yesterday? Was this really the deadliest event in the history of Russian involvement in Syria?
Well, it was the deadliest event. The facts are correct, but if we put it in the context of how Russia views its involvement in Syria, I think that from what I've seen today in the Russian media, it didn't attract the attention that we would, that maybe we will, that we would have thought that it would attract if it happened maybe in another country or if it happened here. I think that Russia stays its course in terms of its involvement in Syria, and I think that there is an understanding in the Russian government and in the Russian public that it is a war and that there will be casualties. So in that context, I can't see how this will really change the course of Russian involvement in Syria.
What do you expect Russia's next move to be in Syria?
I think that Russia, the objectives that Russia put forward when it got involved in Syria in September 2015, where I think that they feel that to some extent they're achieving them, and I think that they will stay the course. And what I mean by that is that the Russians see this arena as the heart of the Middle Eastern arena. Syria represents Russia's involvement in the Middle East and not only in Syria, and the shaping of the new order in the Middle East. So I think that Russians, and this is also why such an event will not change Russia's course. I think that they see themselves as achieving these goals. They're challenging the US in this arena, which is very important for the Russians. They're positioning themselves as a world power. There is a perception in the region that they're driving events on the ground and political events. And they are also creating leverage for themselves on the international arena. So all of these things are happening, and this is the course that Russia is taking in Syria and in the Middle East.
So, Netanyahu just visited Russia in June, and he raised a lot of concern over Iran's involvement in Syria. What is the Israeli role in Syria, and how will Israeli-Russian relations affect that?
Israel chose to maintain neutral in the war in Syria. It had very strong incentives to remain neutral. So, in some ways, it doesn't have a role. And yet it has interests in the new order that will be taking hold in Syria, whether it's in the near or in the more interim or further future, but it has interests in Syria, and most specifically is what will happen in Ramat HaGolan, in the Golan Heights. So I think that this is an issue that is definitely on the table in the political discussions between Israel and Russia. And we have to remember that Russia, when it entered the war in Syria, and this is again about the political positioning of itself in the Middle East, Russia basically made itself a neighbor of Israel. So de facto, we can't ignore it, and specifically, we can't ignore the opportunity to engage a relatively friendly power that is on our northern borders. In terms of Russia's relations with Iran, Israel, I think, will not be able to really influence Russia's relations with Iran. It has a long history, and it's a very entrenched relationship, although not always as good as it seems. But I think that these are concerns that Israel will voice, but I'm not sure what would be achieved.
How do you think the United States is viewing Israel's recent talks with Russia and just Israeli-Russian relations as a whole?
Well, I hope that what I said earlier is, I hope that it is something that the American side understands, that Russia really very forcefully and effectively inserted itself into Middle Eastern politics in a way that it is impossible to ignore Russia here. I don't think we should confuse things. I think that it is clear to everyone in Israel that the US and Israel are strategic allies, and I think it's clear for decision makers in Israel. But I think that it would be unproductive not to have a political dialogue with Russia.
It's funny the way you explain it. It's like kids bickering, if you hang out with him, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. But, well, thank you so much for coming, and it was very enlightening, and hopefully we'll have you back again soon.
Thank you.
The BDS movement seems to be getting stronger around the world, so how does Israel combat it? A new book has just been published called BDS Unmasked that gives world leaders the tools needed to push back against the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with the book's author Dan Diker to hear about it.
There is a big deception in the BDS international movement, and that is that the leaders of BDS try to convince the Western world that BDS is merely a punitive campaign to create two states for two peoples, one for the Palestinians, one for the Israelis. That's a deception. What we expose in the book, BDS Unmasked, is that the BDS campaign is a partner campaign to terror groups like Hamas and others, and the PLO, and even the Palestinian Authority for that matter. And their goal is no less than their publicly declared goal of the destruction of the State of Israel. And we show exactly what their plans are, what their goals are, what the radical roots of the movement are, and therefore anybody who really wants to know what BDS is all about from the beginning to the end should read the book.
So is this meant for the college campuses, meant for the U.S. Congress to read? Who's your audience?
We published the book BDS Unmasked for decision makers. That means anyone from government decision makers to legislators in parliaments around the world, the media, student leaders, people who have to make decisions about legislating against BDS, just like 10 U.S. states have done and another 10 are about to pass anti-BDS legislation. It's to give them the information they need about the radical and extremist BDS movement in order to make the most informed decisions that they can.
If you were to pinpoint where is the biggest problem regarding BDS, is it on the campuses? Is it boycotts of, for example, artists that are encouraged not to come here? Where is the main problem that's affecting us?
There are two problems with BDS. One, BDS as a let's just say a cultural boycott is a very easy campaign to execute, and Israel has and Jewish artists have struggled at times, like Matatiyahu, who is the Jewish rock artist, has struggled in Spain with that. Israel has struggled as well with reggae, and others have struggled against other types of sporting events where the Palestinian Authority has refused to participate with Israeli athletes. That's a limited problem. The larger problem is that BDS is a code word for the political warfare campaign that has legal elements, it has diplomatic components, it has economic components. So it's a multi-front political war against the existence of a Jewish state anywhere in the Middle East. And their leaders, like Omar Barghouti and others, are saying it publicly. We are exposing those voices and bringing those opinions right to people's living rooms so that people understand that this is a maximalist campaign whose goal is no less than the elimination of a Jewish nation state in the Middle East.
Is this book a sign that Israel and the Jewish people and those that care about Israel's good name are starting to fight back?
Well, I think it is, Steve. I think that the book is another arrow in the quiver of the anti-BDS movement that began in Israel. One can mark the date. It was May 2015 when the Orange executive, the CEO Stéphane Richard of France, made a terrible comment to his colleagues in Egypt, saying he would cancel a contract with Israel. And from that moment on until today, there has been a major backlash by the Israeli public and their elected representatives from the left, center to the right side of the Israeli political map. And there are others in Britain who are following suit, such as the British local councils are prohibiting BDS. The Paris City Council prohibits now BDS, and of course the United States is leading other countries in legally prohibiting doing business with organizations that sponsor BDS. Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, said, he passed an executive order that basically said, if you boycott Israel, New York will boycott you. This is the beginning of great momentum, and the reason that the book comes out now is to solidify that momentum with hardened facts and figures in order to give people the type of intellectual ammunition and weaponry that they need in order to fight this radical program.
Israeli actress Gal Gadot is known to most of the world as the new Wonder Woman after portraying the action icon in the Batman vs. Superman movie this year. But to us, she's just a hometown girl. Gadot just showed her support for her Israeli sisters in a new video that's going viral by showcasing their amazing array of talents. Let's check it out.
You can tell by the way Cheers to our wonderful and amazing Israeli women.
You can tell by the way she talks, she rules her words. You can see in her eyes.
Joining us today in the studio is Adi Abras, the creator of this viral video. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So, to begin, what gave you the idea to come up with this video?
So we are 3 students at IDC, and as a part of our Masters in Communication New Media and a seminar of Branding Israel, we created this video. We wanted to show a different aspect of Israel through great women, and Gadot is the star.
Yeah, so why did you choose to specifically focus on women? Because, you know, we don't see that many videos talking about the talents of women in the workforce here in this country.
So as we sat down and to think about the final project, and we wanted a different, as I said, a different aspect to show Israel to the world. And instead of showing Tel Aviv's nightlife, great restaurants, and the beach, we thought immediately about Gadot is really huge and popular now. And she's the ultimate Wonder Woman. She's Israeli. She's not ashamed of it. And we noticed that we're surrounded by a lot of all kinds of Wonder Women around us, whether it's family, friends. So we chose to use that in our video. And we chose different women with different professions. And if we had more time for the video, if we could make it longer, more women would be there. Moms, students, entrepreneurs, all kinds.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the things I always hear people ask about is the fact that there are women serving in the military here, because that's not something that you commonly see around the world, right? So the fact that there are, you know, 18-year-old girls going into army for 2 years is something that really makes Israel stand out in that sense. Now, Gadot obviously made this video blow up more than just the fact that it's, you know, the topic itself is amazing. How did you get her involved?
It's not a secret that Gal is a great woman and amazing ambassador of Israel in the world. She always supports Israel. She's not ashamed of it. I'm not going to reveal how we got her. I'll keep it as a secret.
Yeah, how can we bring her in here?
I'll let you know later.
Okay, sounds good. Great. Well, so, you know, how do you think Israel as a country encourages and increases women's rights?
So Israel is a country where you can choose what to study, where to work, even what to wear. Some countries around the world, women don't have these opportunities. They don't have the option to be whatever they want to be.
Especially in the Middle East.
Exactly. So that's the important message behind the video. It's a place to grow and to be a part of, and we see it now. Recent years, more women in startups, business, in the Knesset. So it's we still have a way to go, but I think it's in a positive place already.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny because as you're saying this, I think we should have taken statistics about, you know, improving women's rights in Israel and put them up behind us as we have this interview. So I'll remember to do that later on. Now, what has the public reaction been to your video so far?
So the video on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, we have almost 7,000 views. It got really popular on social media such as Facebook and Instagram. For example, Stand With Us published our post, and it has now about 186,000 views, over 4,000 likes, and a lot of shares. The Jerusalem Post did the same thing. They also published it. We got their 57,000 likes. The reaction was pretty amazing. We got really supporting comments from people all over the world. On our personal Instagram accounts, we actually got private messages from fan pages of Gal from all over the world. UK, Russia, and Italy. We're just supporting messages, supporting Gal, the video, and saying they want to come. They want to see the great Israeli women. So I think we did it.
That's amazing. You know, now you're a young woman yourself. What are your plans for the future after having created such an amazing video?
I think the world is really open right now for women. Myself, I'm a graduate of the Entrepreneurship Club of IDC, so I would really want to go that way, startups, business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The goal for the video is to be also international, to get more international exposed, but I think we're on the right way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you
Kol
for
hakavod.
having me.
Congratulations on this video.
Thank you.
All right, Israeli sports fans, you can stop holding your breath now. It's official, basketball star Amari Stoudemire has signed on to play for the Hapoel Jerusalem basketball team for 2 years. The 33-year-old All-Star just announced his retirement from the NBA on July 26, ending a 14-year career in the world's most famous basketball association. Stoudemire is a 6-time NBA All-Star with career averages of 18.9 points and 7.8 rebounds per game. Now Stoudemire says he's looking forward to playing for Hapoel Jerusalem, and that his family is excited to start a new journey in Israel, a country he has, quote, grown to love. Hapoel Jerusalem won the Israeli championship last year for the first time in its history, and is set to play in the Euro Cup this year. The owner of the team says he's thrilled that Stoudemire is coming on board, especially because bringing him to Jerusalem will raise the profile of the entire Israeli basketball league. Details of the 2-year contract are being kept under wraps, but in July 2013, Stoudemire announced that he had become part owner of the Hapoel team. Although Stoudemire technically isn't Jewish, he considers himself to be culturally Jewish and has long believed that he has Hebrew roots. The former NBA star's new career in Israel is expected to raise interest in the Israeli Basketball League from talented international players around the world. It's now time for our segment Today in History. 93 years ago today, one of Israel's most famous politicians of all time was born, Shimon Peres. Peres served as both the Prime Minister and President of Israel, and he's known affectionately by Israelis as Shimi. After an illustrious military and political career in the Israeli Knesset, Peres became the first Prime Minister to become an Israeli president. When he finally retired from the top position in 2014, he was the world's oldest head of state. One of Shimon Peres' greatest political achievements was receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in the peace talks that produced the Oslo Accords, which were viewed as Israel's closest chance to reaching peace with the Palestinians. Although he's not officially been involved in politics in recent years, he's had a major impact on Israeli politics and society. So happy birthday, Shimi. May you live until 120. We all make jokes about Israeli drivers thinking the highways over here are racetracks, but in one case, it's really paid off. A 24-year-old Israeli is on track to becoming not only the first competitor from the Jewish state to drive at a NASCAR series race, but also the first Jew to ever do so. Alon Day is now preparing to make his debut at the NASCAR Xfinity Series, which will take place at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course on August 13th. Xfinity is considered the second-tier league of the preeminent American stock car racing organization, right after the top-level Sprint Cup Series. For the past 2 years, the native of the Israeli city of Ashdod has been perfecting his racing skills at NASCAR's European circuit, known as the Wheel and Euro Series. Last May, he then tweeted out about how excited he was to have been selected as one of 11 drivers for the NASCAR Next program, which develops and promotes the competition's upcoming stars. Day was initially fired up about the sport by doing a lot of go-karting as a teenager. His achievement is even more impressive if you consider that even though Israel offers a lot of advantages, it's not exactly known as an oasis for motor sports. Race car driving may also be the last frontier for Israeli participation, and the USA Today newspaper is reporting that Day appears to be the very first Jewish driver that NASCAR has ever featured in one of its top leagues. So all of us here at home want to wish Alon congratulations and good luck in Ohio. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. If you want to succeed in Israel, you have to learn to be fast, so today's word is ma'er, which means fast in Hebrew. Now, when we say fast, we're talking about everything, from driving on the aggressive Israeli streets to being fast enough to come up with the next big idea for a startup. Israelis love being the first at everything, whether it's inventing groundbreaking technology or cures for diseases. And you have to be ma'er to come first, right? According to most Israelis, if everything seems under control, you're just not going fast enough. While Israelis have a strong appreciation for the meirut, or speed, they also appreciate the need to live in the moment. After all, life moves pretty ma'er, and if you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Wednesday is expected to be sunny with a high of 89 degrees. The sun should stay out through Thursday with a high of 88. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.81 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.